In the tense community town hall meeting, a confident black woman named Tasha Lewis stands up to voice a concern, but a white officer publicly shuts her down. The room watches, silent. The insult is loud, racial and deliberate. But Tasha's silence is louder and her comeback devastating. By the end of the night, no one remembers the cop's name. They remember hers. "We don't let people like you speak here." The room fell into a thick silence, as if someone had dropped a curtain of shame over the entire gathering. The community center was packed wall to wall. Foldable chairs creaked under tension. Kids fidgeted in their mothers' laps. The scent of old coffee, warm plastic, and bitter tension hung in the air. A makeshift stage stood under a cheap banner. "Public safety and community dialogue. Let's build together." That slogan had just become a joke. Officer Craig Renshaw, tall, pale, decorated and smug, had his arms folded like he owned the damn town. He stood at the front, staring down at the woman who dared to raise her hand, then her voice. Tasha Lewis didn't flinch. Mid-30s. Locks tied back. Dark eyes like unshakable stone, a black turtleneck and tailored pants. She wasn't here to play the victim. She wasn't here to be polite. She was here to be heard, and he knew it, I said. Renshaw repeated, louder now. "This space isn't for personal attacks or unverified claims. Sit down." Her gaze didn't move. "You're calling a first-hand experience unverified. I'm calling it irrelevant," he smirked. "We're talking about community trust, not personal grievances." Someone shifted in the crowd. A mother clutched her daughter's hand tighter. A high school teacher from the back row stood halfway, then sat again. Eyes darted between the two like watching a train approach a broken track. Tasha's lips parted slowly. Her voice is calm, too calm. "You're right." A brief, smug grin formed on the cop's face. She stepped forward anyway. "You're right. This isn't about personal grievances," she said. "This is about a woman who watched her teenage son get shoved against a squad car for looking suspicious on the way home from chess club," murmurs began. "This is about a woman who called 911 and was asked if the suspect sounded black before she even explained the emergency. Someone whispered, 'Jesus!' And this is about a woman who filed a formal complaint and never even received a case number. Because the officer she complained about was..." She turned, eyes locking onto Renshaw. "You." The entire room exhaled. Audible. Shocking. Renshaw stepped forward, his neck flushed. "You're out of line." "No. I'm finally in the line. Right where I belong." He pointed to the back. "You need to leave." She didn't move. Renshaw's hand hovered near his radio mic, a gesture she'd seen before, a warning, a threat. The same posture officers used before dragging peaceful protesters from sidewalks. She could smell his fear now, the kind that dressed itself as power. Tasha smiled slightly. "You should Google me." The sentence fell like a stone in still water. The silence afterward didn't feel empty. It felt heavy. She turned toward the audience, her voice now soft but unshakable. "If a cop thinks they can silence a woman here, in front of all of you, imagine what they're doing out there when no one's watching." Someone started clapping, then someone else, and then the room burst, not with noise but with shift, with discomfort, with awakening, with accountability knocking. Officer Renshaw stood frozen, watching control slip through his fingers like sand. Tasha looked straight into his eyes. "You tried to silence me." She leaned in just enough for the mic to catch her whisper. "That was your first mistake." Then she walked off the stage. What the crowd didn't know yet, what Renshaw was about to find out, was that this woman wasn't just some angry citizen. She was a civil rights attorney. She was building a case, and she had names. "We don't let people like you speak here." The words cracked through the air like a slap across the face, loud and deliberate, echoing against the cinder-block walls of the Eastwood Community Center. You could feel the ripple spread across the room, A collective shift of breath, eyes, postures. Silence not peaceful, but stunned, violent in its stillness. Every chair in the packed hall seemed to freeze in place. Someone coughed. A toddler dropped a toy that clattered louder than it should have. But no one dared say a word. Officer Craig Renshaw stood at the front, posture rigid, lips curled with authority, his uniform immaculate, his tone dripping with superiority. He wasn't just a cop, he was the cop, the department's community liaison, a man praised for bridging gaps, shaking hands, posing in smiling photos with local business owners. But tonight, the mask cracked, and standing in front of him, unmoved, unfazed and unblinking, was Tasha Lewis, black, mid-30s, locks pulled back, minimal makeup, dressed in a black fitted turtleneck and slate-gray slacks, no flashy jewelry. Her hands were calm at her sides, no microphone, no raised voice, just presence. The crowd knew her. Some had seen her at community events, others had watched her on late-night panels discussing civil rights. A few recognized her from courtrooms. She wasn't loud, she didn't have to be. Her presence spoke, and Officer Renshaw had just tried to erase it. She tilted her head, not in defiance, but in disbelief. "Excuse me," I said. Renshaw's voice grew louder, as if repeating the insult somehow made it more acceptable. "This forum isn't for rants. If you want to file a complaint, there's a process." I didn't ask to file anything. I came to speak, and you were denied. Sit down. Someone in the crowd flinched. A young boy with a hoodie stared at the floor, ashamed without knowing why. A schoolteacher's eyes darted from Renshaw to Tasha to the floor, then back again. A grandmother near the back clenched her purse, her breath shallow. Renshaw had spoken like a man who'd never been challenged, who assumed his badge was a shield, his voice law. Tasha took a single step forward. "This is a town hall meeting. The purpose, as written on that cheap banner behind you, is public dialogue. Not censorship," he grinned. "Only productive dialogue." "And who decides that?" she asked. He raised a brow. "I do." The tension in the room hit a new level. You could almost hear the hearts beating. Some looked toward the exits. Others at the cameras, recording everything. Tasha scanned the room. "My name is Tasha Lewis. Some of you know me, some don't. I'm a mother, a neighbor, and yes, I'm a civil rights attorney, but tonight I'm here as a concerned citizen." Renshaw rolled his eyes. "We're not entertaining speeches." "This isn't a speech. It's a warning." More murmurs. She turned to face the crowd fully now. 2 weeks ago, my son, 15, straight-A student, founder of his school's chess club, was stopped and frisked walking home. No warrant, no cause, just a hoodie and brown skin. Renshaw muttered, "Here we go." He was called boy by the arresting officer, slammed against the car, phone taken, backpack dumped, no apology, no explanation, just trauma. "Unverified claim," Renshaw snapped. She stared at him down. "You were the one who approved the officer's report." Gasps. Now, the spotlight turned. Everyone in the room was seeing clearly. He wasn't resisting, he wasn't aggressive, he wasn't even late, but he was black. And that made him a suspect. "Okay, this is slander," Renshaw growled. "No," she replied, "this is true, and truth makes people uncomfortable when it threatens their illusion of power." He reached for his shoulder mic, a rehearsed move, a bluff, but she didn't. Blink, she reached into her coat and pulled out a file, thick, bound, stamped. "This is a copy of every excessive force complaint filed in this district over the past 8 years. 87% of them came from black residents. Less than 5% were investigated." Eyes widened. Phones were lifted. The whispers became words. She placed the file on the table in front of her. "This is your department's legacy." Then she added another folder. "This one contains affidavits, footage, and pending subpoenas. See, Officer Renshaw, I didn't just come here to speak. I came here to give notice." He stepped back. For the first time, visibly shaken. "You tried to silence me because you thought this town hall was your courtroom, but out there," she said, pointing toward the doors. "That's my courtroom." The crowd stirred. Tasha stepped forward again, calm, commanding. "You thought I'd come here to complain. I came to dismantle it." Officer Renshaw opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "And next time you try to silence a black woman," she added, voice low but fierce, "make sure she's not holding a microphone in one hand, and your department's secrets in the other." The silence that followed was different. It was respect. She turned toward the crowd. "Don't worry," she said. "I won't take more of your time. I have a press conference at 9 a.m. And with that, she walked off the stage. Behind her, Officer Craig Renshaw stood stiff, jaw clenched, face red, not from authority but fear, because he now understood who she was. And soon the whole country would too. The sun hadn't even fully risen when Eastwood was set ablaze, digitally at least. By 6:12 a.m., hashtags were trending. Chew Eastwood exposed, chew Tasha Lewis, chew emails of shame. By 6:17 a.m., the town's official website crashed under sudden traffic, and by 6:30, Officer Craig Renshaw's name was being plastered across news tickers. The leak wasn't subtle. It was a precision strike. Tasha didn't do anything subtle. She sat in her small home office, sipping dark roast coffee from a chipped mug that read, "Justice Never Sleeps." Her laptop was open. A dozen tabs ran across the top. A national reporter was on hold. Her assistant Lena paced nearby, phone glued to her ear, coordinating interviews like a storm manager bracing for impact. Tasha glanced at the email that had just arrived. Subject: Urgent. CNN requesting live statement by 8:15 a.m. EST. She didn't smile. There was no satisfaction in any of this, not yet. The file she leaked last night contained over 70 internal emails from the Eastwood Police Department, not hacked, not stolen, subpoenaed months ago, quietly, redacted, filtered, and now released. The emails told a story the department had buried for years, one dated back to 2017. "We don't patrol the East Block after midnight. It's not worth the paperwork." Another: "Make sure Lewis's file disappears. She's a liability." But the one that sent the internet into chaos read, "That woman is getting too loud. Maybe it's time someone shut her up." It was signed by Deputy Chief Nolan Barrett, the same Barrett who sat grinning next to Officer Renshaw at every town hall, the same man who'd been awarded Community Builder of the Year by the mayor's office last fall. By 7 a.m., City Hall was in crisis mode. Mayor Elaine Potter, who had yet to make a statement, was barricaded in her office with her chief of staff, phones ringing off the hook, press standing on the front steps. One camera caught an aide trying to sneak out the back with a bundle of papers, likely shredding bound. Meanwhile, Officer Renshaw sat alone in his squad car in an empty parking lot outside the precinct. Uniform on, badge clipped, hands trembling, he'd barely slept. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News notifications, missed calls, death threats, and worst of all, silence from Barrett. He hit the call again. Voicemail. "Chief, it's me again. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." He rubbed his eyes, thought about his pension, thought about last night, Tasha's words still echoing in his skull. "You should Google me." He had. At 2:13 a.m., it didn't help him sleep. Back in her home, Tasha was preparing for battle. She wasn't just exposing corruption, she was orchestrating its collapse. This wasn't a press stunt. It was a prosecution plan. She looked up as Lena re-entered the room. "NPR's confirmed for noon. MSNBC wants you in studio by tomorrow morning." And Lena hesitated. "Your old law school mentor called. He said he's proud." That made her pause. Just for a second, she nodded. "Tell him thank you, and make sure we get the next wave of files decrypted and prepped by tonight." Next. Wave? Tasha's eyes didn't flinch. "They've seen the symptoms. It's time they see the infection. By 8:30 a.m., the Eastwood PD held a press conference. It was rushed, defensive, sloppy. Chief Barrett didn't show. Instead, an interim spokesperson, nervous and blinking too much, read a prepared statement. The department is currently investigating the unauthorized release of internal communications. We are committed to transparency and fairness in all proceedings. At this time, we urge the public not to draw conclusions from isolated context-lacking emails. A reporter shouted from the crowd, "Is it true that Tasha Lewis is filing a class action lawsuit?" No comment. "Do you deny these emails came from your servers?" No comment. "Where is Chief Barrett?" No comment. But that answer said everything. Because, while the department scrambled to cover its face, Tasha was building a courtroom outside the court, one made of screens, headlines, and undeniable receipts. Meanwhile, in an apartment on the other side of town, a man named Jerome Watkins stared at his phone with a mix of fear and hope. He was a former officer, honorably discharged, silenced, threatened. He'd filed a complaint 3 years ago about misconduct inside the Eastwood PD. His evidence disappeared, his pension slashed, his marriage. Collateral damage. But now, Tasha Lewis was saying the quiet part out loud. He picked up his phone, dialed a number he hadn't called in over 2 years. A voice answered, "Ms. Lewis's office." He hesitated, then said, "Tell her Jerome's ready to testify." At 9:02 a.m., Tasha sat on a local news panel via live stream, calm, direct. The anchor asked, "Ms. Lewis, what do you hope to gain from all this?" She answered instantly, "Justice." "And if you don't get it?" She paused, then leaned slightly toward the camera. "Oh, I will." The anchor blinked. "That's confident." "No," she replied, "that's evidence." The camera didn't capture the full gravity of her words, but the internet did. It clipped the quote, shared it, turned it into a rallying cry. "Oh, I will." Tasha Lewis, 2025, printed on T-shirts, posted on protest signs, echoed across state lines. That night, in the quiet of her office, Tasha finally allowed herself a breath. The storm had started. The wind was wild, but she was anchored. She reached into her drawer and pulled out an old photograph. Her father, a civil rights organizer from the 60s, beaten, jailed, silenced, but never erased. She looked into his eyes and whispered, "We're not done yet," because what had begun as a town hall takedown was now a movement, and movements don't go silent. A young rookie cop, Daniel Ross, watches his department unravel as Tasha's leaks gain traction. Torn between the oath he took and the truth he's seeing, he quietly begins gathering evidence of misconduct from inside. But when one of his superiors confronts him, Daniel realizes his next move could cost him everything or make him a hero. Full chapter content. Officer Daniel Ross had only been with the Eastwood Police Department for 11 months. 11 months. 3 commendations, 0 disciplinary marks, and a growing lump of guilt that refused to go away. When he first signed up, he thought he'd be different. He told himself he'd serve with dignity, protect his community, and push back from the inside when necessary. He believed in the badge, in justice, in change. But over the past 48 hours, every belief he held had been beaten black and blue. He sat quietly in the locker room of the precinct, watching news coverage on his phone with the volume barely audible. Through his AirPods, Tasha Lewis's face was plastered across every screen in the country now. Calm, fierce, surgical. The woman had just exposed half his department without raising her voice, and now Daniel couldn't breathe without questioning his role in it all. He'd seen things. Racial profiling swept under suspicious activity. Body cam footage that malfunctioned, internal reports that disappeared between hands, officers cracking jokes about ghetto parenting and thug neighborhoods while sipping coffee in the break room. But he kept quiet, told himself he was new, Told himself he'd speak up when the time was right. Now that time was bleeding through the walls. A locker slammed shut nearby, breaking his thoughts. Sergeant Donnelly entered, white, older, bulky, with a beer belly, and decades of arrogance hardened into his walk. He eyed Daniel like a hawk spotting a twitch in the grass. "You look jumpy, rookie," Donnelly muttered. "I'm fine," Daniel said, voice even. "You seen that Lewis nonsense?" Daniel hesitated. "I've been following it. She's trying to burn the whole house down over some cherry-picked emails. Ain't no systemic racism in Eastwood, just a bunch of people who hate cops 'cause it's trendy." Daniel didn't respond. Donnelly chuckled darkly. "You're smart to keep quiet. This department takes care of its own." Then he leaned in, low voice venomous. "Don't start thinking you're different just 'cause your skin's a shade darker. You wear this uniform. You're one of us." "You forget that." Daniel turned away. That was enough for Donnelly. He walked out, but Daniel sat still, jaw clenched. Not angry, not scared, focused. That night, he stayed late under the pretense of extra paperwork. He slipped into the evidence room at shift change, where oversight was weakest. There were files the department hoped no one would ever reopen. Disciplinary logs, surveillance, backups, unfiled complaints with timestamps and badge numbers. Daniel didn't touch anything, didn't steal. He just started taking notes, names, dates, incidents that lined up with Tasha's files. He cross-referenced arrest logs with demographic stats, found gaps, found patterns, found lies. This wasn't cherry-picked. It was a blueprint of corruption, and he wasn't going to keep quiet anymore. The next morning, Daniel made a private call. "Tasha Lewis's office," came Lena's voice. "I have information," he said. From inside, Lena hesitated. "Are you an officer?" "Yes, but I'm not safe to speak freely." There was a pause, then, "Hold, please." Moments later, a new voice came on the line, calm, steady, Tasha herself. "You're not safe?" she asked. "No," he whispered, "but I can help you. There's more. What you released. It's the tip. There are things even you haven't seen." "What's your name?" He hesitated. "Daniel." "All right, Daniel, you don't have to give me anything else yet. But if you're serious, we'll make sure you're protected." "I don't care about protection. I just don't want to be part of the silence anymore." Tasha was quiet for a beat. Then, "That's how change starts." But things don't stay quiet in Eastwood for long. By the end of the week, someone from Internal Affairs had gotten wind that a young officer had been asking too many questions. Daniel came in for his next shift to find his locker ajar, its contents tossed. Note was pinned to his uniform, "Choose wisely." He pocketed it, jaw locked, and walked to his squad car like nothing had happened. But he knew what it meant. Someone was watching. And now there was no turning back. Meanwhile, in a quiet cafe 2 towns over, Tasha was meeting with another former officer who had requested to speak off the record, Jerome Watkins. He slid a thumb drive across the table without a word. Inside, 12 gigs of raw, unfiltered footage from traffic stops, internal meetings, and audio recordings. "I kept it," he finally said, "in case someone ever came looking." "You sure you're okay sharing this now?" she asked. He nodded. "Because if we don't end this, Daniel's gonna end up like me, pushed out, silenced, scared." Tasha slid the drive into her bag. "You just gave us the key," she said. "No," Jerome replied. "Daniel is the key." That night, Tasha received a package at her door. No name, no note. Inside were printed photos, black and white surveillance stills from inside the precinct. A red circle marked one frame, Officer Donnelly, standing with another man, handing him what looked like a sealed file. Timestamp, 3 nights. Echoed the caption below the image, "They're hiding more than you think." Tasha sat back. Someone was still inside the department, still risking everything. And she knew now this wouldn't be one with just court filings or press conferences. It would take brave betrayal from the very heart of the system, and Daniel Ross had just stepped into that fire. At 9:01 a.m. sharp, Tasha Lewis stepped onto the courthouse steps with a quiet storm behind her. She didn't speak at first. She didn't have to. Reporters swarmed like bees, sensing blood in the air. Cameramen climbed onto benches. Microphones stretched toward her face like sunflowers chasing light. Her legal team stood behind her, 4 lawyers in sleek, dark suits, not one of them smiling. Not because they weren't confident, but because they knew they were about to change everything. Tasha approached the podium slowly, pulling a thick folder from her briefcase and placing it carefully beside the mic. "This morning," she said, her voice carrying like a bell through the crowd, "we filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the Eastwood Police Department, the city of Eastwood, and 5 named officers, including Officer Craig Renshaw and Deputy Chief Nolan Barrett." Cameras clicked in a frenzy. The evidence of systemic abuse, racial profiling, targeted harassment, and deliberate obstruction of justice is overwhelming. But it is not new, it is not sudden, and it is not isolated. She held up a second folder, red-labeled, with dozens of tabs poking out the side. This case is not about revenge. It's about reckoning. Then she said the words that went viral within seconds. Eastwood can't be reformed until it's exposed, and today we begin the exposure. Behind her associate lawyer handed out press kits. Inside, printouts of emails, photos of redacted body cam logs, and a timeline that stretched back a decade. The department couldn't spin this as a misunderstanding. Not anymore. By noon, the story had jumped from local stations to national. And headlines, "Civil Rights Lawsuit Rocks Eastwood. Officers named in federal complaint." She named names. Tasha Lewis takes on entire department police. Chief silent. City attorney calls case a fabrication, but offers no proof inside. The department, the mood was radioactive. Desks were empty. Officers whispered instead of speaking. Half the squad had already lawyered up, and in the middle of it all sat Daniel Ross, pretending to do paperwork. While his throat tightened more with every passing hour, he could feel the tension building. Like storm pressure, someone knew he was watching, maybe more than one. Every glance felt longer, every silence felt louder. His locker had been cleaned out again, this time no note. He got up, walked to the break room, and opened the fridge. His lunch was gone. In its place, a banana with "rat" written in permanent marker. He didn't react. He just threw it away. That night, Tasha sat in a quiet hotel room overlooking the courthouse. Her team had insisted on moving her out of her home, security reasons. Her face was now everywhere, and not all attention was friendly. Threats had begun trickling in. Blocked numbers, anonymous DMs, photos of her house from across the street. But she didn't flinch. She'd been here before, in lesser storms, yes, but storms all the same. She sat cross-legged on the hotel bed, sorting through a fresh pile of affidavits. One stood out. It wasn't signed, no name, no contact, just a story. It described a staged arrest, a planted gun, a juvenile record forged to justify a beating, the badge number listed, Renshaw's the date. 4 years ago, it aligned with a complaint Tasha had flagged, but hadn't connected, until now. She looked up at Lena, seated across from her. "Someone inside is sending us things anonymously. The same person who sent the locker room photos." "Could be, you think it's Daniel?" Tasha tapped the document slowly. "Or someone else just as scared?" Lena lowered her voice. "What if the department starts targeting your witnesses?" Tasha exhaled. "Then we keep exposing, faster, louder, bigger, because silence was no longer safety. Visibility was back." At the precinct, a closed-door meeting was underway. Deputy Chief Barrett had returned. He sat at the head of a private conference room, sleeves rolled up, jaw clenched, eyes darting to every face at the table. "This department," he said slowly, "is bleeding. Silence. We've got officers leaking information, files disappearing, names being given to that damn lawyer. I want to know who the hell is helping her." Another pause. Then he pointed to a younger officer. "You, Barnes. Who's been snooping?" "In archives?" Barnes stammered. I don't know, sir. I just cover the logs." Barrett didn't blink. "I want a list of every officer who's accessed internal records this week. Timestamps, locations, cameras." "Yes, sir. And if you find Ross's name on it," Barrett said, voice turning cold, "bring him to me." The table nodded. And just like that, the hunter had become the hunted. Daniel got the warning. At midnight, his cousin Marcus, who worked security part-time at the building, texted one word, "Careful." Then a second, "Barrett." Daniel didn't sleep. Couldn't. He stared at the ceiling, heartbeat in his ears. He didn't regret what he'd done. But now, the stakes had multiplied. He sat at his desk and wrote a letter. Plain. No digital footprint. Then he tucked it into an envelope, sealed it, and wrote one name on the front, Tasha. If anything happened to him, he needed someone to know how deep this went, what they were hiding, who they were threatening, and how far they'd go to keep it buried. It arrived just before dawn. No note, no sender, just a flash drive inside a blank envelope slid beneath Tasha's hotel room door. Her legal assistant found it when she opened the door for coffee delivery. Tasha was already up, sifting through sworn statements. The moment she saw the envelope, she knew it wasn't junk. It was clean. Too clean. She plugged it into her laptop, and immediately a single audio file popped up. Barrett Conference Room, Jan23.mp3. She clicked play. The sound was muffled at first, like the mic was hidden in a coat. But the voices came through clear enough to be unmistakable. Barrett. The rookie's been sniffing where he shouldn't. Name's Ross. Unknown voice. What do we do? Barrett. If he talks, we all burn. Start watching him. Discredit him. Make sure he never gets a platform. Tasha's breath caught. The file was just 3 minutes long, but it was nuclear. This wasn't speculation. This was proof. Proof of a coordinated attempt to suppress a whistleblower. And if they were willing to take down one of their own, there was no limit to what else they were hiding. She stared at the screen, lips pressed tight. Then she reached for her phone and dialed. "Lena," she said, "we need to go public with this, today." Meanwhile, across town, Daniel Ross stood alone. In a hallway outside Deputy Chief Barrett's office, the text message had been short. "My office now." He'd nearly ignored it, nearly walked out. But running would only confirm suspicions. Besides, he wasn't the same scared rookie anymore. He took a slow breath and stepped in. The blinds were closed, the lights dim. Barrett sat behind his desk, like a judge ready to issue sentence. His thick hands were folded, elbows wide. A bottle of water stood untouched beside a folder marked "Confidential." "Sit," he said. Daniel obeyed. Barrett didn't waste time. "You've been accessing records you weren't assigned to, poking into files outside your scope, asking the wrong questions." Daniel said nothing. "You're young," Barrett continued, his voice slow and heavy. "Still got a future. Wife? Kids?" "No." "Good. Then let me spell it out. You keep digging, you lose everything. Not just your badge, your reputation, your life." Still, Daniel said nothing. Barrett leaned forward. "I know it was you who leaked the timestamp photos. The email traces back to an IP that pinged near your precinct login. That was a lie. But it was bait." And Daniel didn't bite. Barrett softened his tone, falsely kind, manipulative. "We've all made compromises, son. This is how the real world works. You step out of line, you're no use to anyone. But if you stay quiet, we'll protect you." Daniel raised his eyes. "I didn't join to be protected," he said. "I joined to protect." Barrett's jaw tightened. Daniel stood. "I've already sent everything I know to someone who won't be threatened." Barrett didn't move, but Daniel saw it. The twitch of his fingers, the shallow breath. A man who'd lost control. "You think you're a hero," Barrett muttered. Daniel stepped toward the door. "No, but I'm not a coward either." And then he left. At exactly 10 a.m., Tasha held another press conference. This time she didn't come with a folder. She came with audio. On the steps of the courthouse, in front of reporters, activists, and a growing crowd of citizens, she played the leaked recording on a speaker. Barrett's voice rang out in full public broadcast. "If he talks, we all burn." Gasps, murmurs, phones held high, recording. The mayor's office issued a rushed statement 10 minutes later. "We are opening a formal investigation into the conduct of Deputy Chief Barrett and all allegations related to whistleblower suppression. Effective immediately, Barrett has been placed on administrative leave." Barrett's fall was fast and hard, but it wasn't over. Daniel turned off his phone and stood on the rooftop of his building, watching the chaos unfold in real time. He wasn't hiding. He was preparing. He knew they'd come for him now, not with threats, but with silence, with subtle sabotages, with reassignment, discrediting, maybe even accidents. But he wasn't alone anymore. Tasha had his back now, and the city had heard his story, even if they didn't know it was his yet. His phone buzzed again. Private. Number. He picked up. A voice said, "You sue by noon." The streets of Eastwood were no longer streets. They were rivers of people, marching, chanting, holding signs that roared louder than any megaphone. "If he talks, we all burn," we heard. You hear us. Silence is complicity." The protest had started with a few dozen people near the courthouse. Within hours, it became thousands. Students skipped school. Nurses walked out of hospitals. Small business owners closed shop and joined in. Entire families came, mothers pushing. Strollers, veterans in faded uniforms, teenagers wrapped in slogans. And at the front of the wave stood Tasha Lewis, holding a mic, her voice rising like a tide that would not retreat. "This is not a moment," she declared. "This is a message." Cheers erupted. "This is not about one bad cop or one silenced voice. This is about a system that thought it could threaten justice into silence." People clapped, shouted, wept, and now the people are speaking, loud, united, unapologetic. A chant broke out behind her. "Tasha! Tasha! Tasha!" She didn't smile. She didn't soak it in. She stayed focused. Today we march. Tomorrow we vote. The next day we restructure. The crowd shook with thunderous applause, but behind the scenes, something even more powerful was moving. In a quiet brick home on the edge of town, Judge Margot Ellison turned off the television. She hadn't stepped into a courtroom in 3 years. Respected, retired, forgotten, but not blind. She had served Eastwood's judicial system for 31 years, long enough to know when. Something was rotten, and this was rot that had been painted over year after year with smiles and awards and polite lies. She walked slowly to her filing cabinet and pulled open a locked drawer she hadn't touched since she retired. Inside were 3 folders. Thin, plain, dangerous. Each one contained sealed internal memos she had quietly kept, documents that never made it to court, statements that were erased before they could be entered into the record, and one damning letter from a prosecutor who'd tried to challenge Chief Barrett 10 years ago. Before disappearing from the public eye, she reread the letter, then picked up her landline. "Lena," she said after the assistant answered, "tell Ms. Lewis Judge Ellison would like to speak, in person. Tonight." At the precinct, chaos was no longer hidden. It was alive. Officer Ross walked through the halls like a ghost. No one spoke to him. No one dared. He wasn't a cop anymore. He was a symbol. He passed an open office door and paused. Inside, Officer Barnes sat on the floor, head in his hands. Daniel leaned in. You okay? Barnes looked up, red-eyed. I didn't know it was this bad. Daniel nodded. Most of us didn't, or didn't want to. Barnes whispered, I think I saw Donnelly shredding files last night. Daniel's chest tightened. You need to report that. He'll come after me. No, he won't. Daniel turned away and tapped his phone. Texted, he's destroying evidence. Need to. Move now, Tasha replied in seconds. I've got a judge on my side. We'll lock him down. That night, in a private room above a jazz bar long forgotten by the city, Tasha met Judge Margot Ellison. The older woman entered wearing a long grey coat and carried a leather briefcase that looked older than most of. The files inside. They sat across from each other, no cameras, no press, just purpose. You're braver than I was, Margot said, her voice calm but brittle with memory. I saw the cracks. I tried to fix them from within, but they just covered them with concrete. Tasha leaned forward. What do you have? Margot placed the briefcase on the table. Sealed testimonies. Suppressed evidence. One case where a judge was bribed to dismiss an excessive force claim. Tasha blinked. You're saying a judge took a bribe? I'm saying our justice system has been wearing a mask. I'm done pretending it's clean. Tasha took the briefcase. I want this to go public, Margot said, but it has to be airtight. It will be, Tasha promised. Margot reached across the table and took her hand. Burn it down, just leave space to rebuild. By the time the next morning came, the protests had grown. The mayor had to be escorted from her home under heavy guard. The police chief hadn't been seen in 48 hours, and Tasha, she was already drafting a second lawsuit with new names, judges, prosecutors, detectives. The silence of Eastwood was over, and the echo of justice was just beginning. About this? Daniel answered, clear and steady. I was never more sure of anything. Then he hung up and turned to go back inside, because the war wasn't won yet. But the first wall had just crumbled. There was no standing room left. By the time the bailiff opened the doors to courtroom 3A, a sea of people surged in like a tidal wave. Press, protesters, police, and families of those who had been silenced for years. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. This was a reckoning. The judge presiding, Honorable Sylvia Reyes, was known for her no-nonsense posture and clinical sense of law. But even she looked unsettled as she glanced over the packed gallery and then down at the motion Tasha had just filed. Emergency injunction to preserve internal records and halt destruction of evidence at Eastwood Police Department. She tapped her gavel once. Ms. Lewis, you have the floor. Tasha stood with the weight of thousands behind her, both literally and symbolically. Your Honor, we are requesting an immediate injunction to freeze all internal operations within the Eastwood Police Department involving document removal, shredding, or digital data erasure. We have credible evidence that files connected to racial profiling, excessive force, and misconduct are being destroyed as we speak. Judge Reyes leaned back. What evidence do you have, Ms. Lewis? Tasha didn't hesitate. Play the audio. Lena, seated beside her, tapped her laptop, and the room fell into stunned silence as Deputy Chief Barrett's voice echoed across the courtroom. If he talks, we all burn. Start watching him. Discredit him. A collective gasp erupted. Whispers cascaded across the courtroom like ripples on water. Tasha continued. This recording proves not only knowledge of misconduct, but an active cover-up. And there's more. She turned and motioned toward the gallery. From the back row, Daniel Ross stood up and began walking down the aisle, alone. Every eye followed him. Tasha addressed the judge. Your Honor, allow me to introduce Officer Daniel Ross, an active duty officer who risked his life to bring us the truth. Judge Reyes nodded. Proceed. Daniel took the stand and raised his hand for the oath. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. He sat. Looked straight ahead. No nerves. Just resolve. Tasha approached slowly. Officer Ross, why did you come forward? Because I joined the force to protect people, not to bury them. Can you explain what you saw? He nodded. I witnessed officers altering body cam footage, racially profiling young black boys without cause. I saw Officer Donnelly destroy complaint files in the evidence room just 3 nights ago. I kept a log. I emailed copies to a secure cloud, and I'm handing it over to the court now. He reached into his coat and handed the judge a sealed USB drive. Tasha turned to the room. This drive contains names, badge numbers, shift logs, timestamps, and redacted reports tied to more than 24 complaints that never made it into official investigation. The judge raised a brow. This is substantial. It's a system, Your Honor, Tasha replied. Not a single bad apple. An orchard. Whispers grew louder. A man in the back shouted, "That's my son's case. You buried it." "Another," he cried out. "That's my sister's name on that report." The bailiff stepped forward, trying to contain the room. Judge Reyes banged her gavel. "Order!" But the courtroom wasn't listening anymore. Tasha didn't stop. "One more thing, Your Honor." She opened a folder and pulled out a letter. "This is a sworn affidavit from retired Judge Margot Ellison. It outlines bribery, suppression, and illegal expungements conducted in coordination with the Eastwood PD. She handed it to the clerk. The judge began to read. Silence stretched long and heavy across the room as eyes flicked between Tasha, Daniel, and the judge. Finally, Judge Reyes looked up. "I'm granting the emergency injunction." Gasps, cheers, tears, all records within. The Eastwood Police Department are to be frozen pending full investigation. Any tampering will result in criminal charges. Tasha didn't smile. She bowed her head lightly. "Thank you, Your Honor." But before she could sit down, the courtroom doors swung open again. A man rushed forward, hand raised. "I have something to say," he shouted. 2 bailiffs stepped to intercept him, but Judge Reyes raised her hand. "Let him speak." The man's name was Isaac Monroe, former Eastwood resident, father, survivor. "My son died in custody. They told me it was an accident. I believed them, but now I see I was lied to. If you're reopening cases, I want his name on that list." Others stood up. A woman sobbed, "My brother was framed." Another whispered, "They said I was resisting, but I was begging." The courtroom became a wave of voices, tired, broken, rising, and then suddenly it was quiet again. Daniel looked around. "I thought I was alone." Tasha placed her hand on the edge of the stand. "You never were." And with that, the city of Eastwood saw something it hadn't in decades. Justice cracking the concrete. They didn't waste time. Within 24 hours of the injunction being granted, Eastwood's political machine roared to life with vengeance. Billboards popped up overnight. "Tasha Lewis is dividing our city." A local news anchor launched a segment titled "Hero or Hysteric." Anonymous accounts online released heavily doctored clips framing Tasha as aggressive, unstable, even dangerous. The smear campaign was calculated, coordinated, and merciless. It didn't stop there. The mayor's office filed a motion to have Tasha disbarred, claiming she had violated ethical boundaries by using leaked materials and holding public press conferences that undermined legal neutrality. The city attorney's office announced a countersuit. Defamation, slander, and obstruction. Lena barged into the hotel room with the documents in hand. "Tasha, they're going after your license." Tasha barely blinked. "Of course they are. They're trying to starve the case, drag it out, drain you. They won't." "How can you be sure?" Tasha finally looked up. "Because I don't need their permission to keep telling the truth." Meanwhile, Daniel Ross had officially been reassigned. He was moved to desk duty, placed under internal review, and had his badge access revoked. In the locker room, his name had been scratched off the whiteboard in permanent black ink. On the surface, it looked like punishment, but Daniel knew better. It was a warning. His mailbox overflowed with anonymous hate mail. Traitor. Rat. Side with her. You die with her. He kept every letter, every note, every photo of his car with the tires slashed, every voicemail where someone disguised their voice and whispered, "Dead man walking." He collected it all and added it to a sealed folder, because someday it would be evidence. But the worst blow came when Daniel's mother was harassed at her nursing job. Two men in uniforms, not officers but clearly ex-military types, cornered her outside the hospital. "After a night shift, you raised a traitor," one said. "Tell him to stop, or we stop him," the other added. She didn't cry, she didn't panic. She called Daniel, and Daniel called Tasha. That night, they met in the back of a closed restaurant, lights low, hearts high. "They're trying to shut us down," he said. "They're failing," she replied. "But it's getting personal," Tasha nodded. "Then we make it public." Daniel squinted. "What do you mean?" "I'm not hiding anymore," she said. "No more closed courtrooms. No more quiet motions. We're doing this out loud." He tilted his head. "I'm setting up a public tribunal. Civil testimonies, streamed open air, survivors, families, lawyers, clergy, judges live unfiltered." Daniel leaned back, breath stolen. "You'll have a target on your back." "I already do. You'll lose friends." "I already have." "You could lose your career." Tasha smiled. "Justice isn't my career, it's my mission." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then I'm in." 2 days later, the first Eastwood Public Tribunal was announced. An outdoor stage was built in the center of the city's civic plaza. Speakers, cameras, seating for 500, and a live stream link pinned to the top of every trending hashtag. In the country, Tasha Lewis presents the testimony they tried to bury. Within hours, the RSVPs passed 3,000. By morning, people were flying in from other cities. From other states, victims, witnesses, activists, musicians, veterans, grandmothers. Daniel arrived early, took his place near the back, beside 2 empty chairs. Tasha stood behind the curtain, hands folded. Calm. Lena leaned in. "Your entire world is watching." Tasha closed her eyes. "I hope they hear us." At noon, she stepped on stage. The applause was thunderous, but she didn't raise a hand to quiet it. She let it ring. Let it echo. Let the sound of support drown out every threat, every smear, every coward behind a screen. Then she spoke. "My name is Tasha Lewis, and I will not be silenced." And the crowd, no longer a crowd but a community, roared with her. The stage was bare, no banners, no slogans, no flashing lights, just a row of chairs, a microphone, and a truth that no longer needed to be dressed up. The Eastwood Public Tribunal began at exactly 12:03 p.m. By 12:07, the live stream had hit 100,000 viewers. By 12:20, it had reached 500,000, and by the time the first testimony ended, it was trending worldwide. A woman named Clarissa Williams took the mic first, mid-40s, former schoolteacher. She spoke softly at first, hands trembling as she described the night her husband was pulled over for a broken tail light. "They said he reached for something," she whispered. "But all he reached for was his wallet." She paused. "He bled out in front of our 9-year-old son." Gasps. Someone wept openly in the crowd. Cameras caught Daniel wiping his eyes. Clarissa continued. "They never called it murder. They called it standard procedure. I called it Tuesday." She stepped away from the mic to a standing ovation. Next came Elijah Moore, now 21, arrested. At 16 for matching a description, 5 days in juvenile detention. No lawyer, no call. "I missed my brother's funeral," he said, voice flat. "They said sorry later, as if sorry brings back time." A ripple of rage moved through the audience. Next, Jamal Prescott, a former EMT who was denied backup during a call in a predominantly black neighborhood. The dispatcher's voice had been recorded, laughing, saying, "Let them bleed." And so it went. One by one, the silence cracked. One by one, They painted a picture that no one could unsee anymore. By the time the seventh speaker finished, the live stream had crossed 1.2 million views. And that's when Daniel stood. He wasn't on the list, wasn't scheduled, but the crowd hushed. As he walked forward, he didn't take the mic right away. Just stood there in full uniform, a man divided between the cloth he wore and the truth he carried. Then he spoke. "My name is Officer Daniel Ross, but today I'm not here as a cop." He paused. "I'm here as a man who stayed silent too. Long. The silence was electric. I saw things. I didn't speak. I told myself I was new, that I was learning, that if I kept my head down, I could change things from the inside." He shook his head. "But silence protects no one. It just feeds the monster." People leaned forward. He glanced at Tasha. She nodded, steady. "I watched a kid get shoved into a wall because he talked back. I watched a mother cry after being told her complaint was lost. I heard my own supervisor call our neighborhoods containment zones." Daniel looked up. "That's not policing. That's war." Cameras zoomed in on his face. It wasn't defiant. It was broken, but healing. "And I'm sorry," he said, "to every person I didn't protect, to every lie I let live. I'm sorry." Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his badge, held it up. "I'm not waiting for them to take this from me," and he placed it on the table. "I'm giving it up." The crowd exploded, not with applause, but with release, with unity, with grief turning into movement. Tasha walked over to him, placed her hand on his shoulder. "You may have lost your badge," she said, "but you just gained an army." And the live stream cut to black for a moment, not because of technical error, but because the platform's servers staggered under traffic. They weren't prepared for truth this raw, this human, this powerful. When it came back on, Daniel was gone from the stage, but his echo remained, and so did the revolution. Morning. Eastwood didn't feel like Eastwood anymore. City Hall was surrounded by protesters. Half the police force had called in sick. The mayor's office hadn't issued a statement in 48 hours. And no one, not one person, could deny that the city was on the edge of a transformation. And the people, they weren't scared. They were awake. Tasha sat in the back seat of a black SUV as it crawled through the crowds downtown. Lena was beside her, eyes glued to a tablet streaming live updates. "They're calling for the mayor's resignation," she said. Tasha nodded. "About time." Someone just leaked emails from her chief of staff. "Anything good?" Lena handed her the tablet. The email on screen read, "We can't let this Lewis woman get any more momentum. Push the DA to sit on the filings. Stall the review board. Flood her with legal counterpressure. If she connects us to Barrett, we're done." Tasha didn't smile. She just looked out the window as the crowd parted around them. Signs filled the air. They knew. "We remember names." Mayor. "Potter, resign." Tasha reached for her phone and typed 2 words to Lena. "Release everything." Within hours, every document in Tasha's possession was made public. Court filings, depositions, internal memos, whistleblower accounts, and Judge Ellison's sealed letters. All of it. No redactions. The move was risky. It would expose everything, even vulnerabilities in their case, but it would also make hiding impossible for everyone else. By midday, major news networks took over the plaza. National anchors interviewed families live. Late-night shows ran monologues about Eastwood. Celebrities tweeted in support. Civil rights icons called Tasha directly, offering pro bono help, but nothing hit harder than the DOJ's announcement. Special federal task force would be arriving within 72 hours to begin an official investigation into the Eastwood Police Department, the City Council, the Mayor's office, and select judicial bodies. It was happening. The system was eating itself. Inside, City Hall, Mayor Elaine Potter looked like a shell of the woman who once cut ribbons at school openings and handed out awards to youth leaders. She hadn't slept. Her legal advisor stood across from her with a folder she didn't want to open. "We're exposed," he said bluntly. "This doesn't stop at Barrett. You sat on reports. You redirected funds. You gave commendations to officers under internal review." Potter shook her head. "We were maintaining order." "No," the advisor replied. "You were maintaining control." She stood up. "They'll come for me." He didn't deny it. Instead, he offered her a choice. "Step down today, or you'll be arrested before the week is out." Meanwhile, Daniel Ross was sitting alone in a modest diner just outside town. No uniform, no fanfare, just coffee. The waitress, older, white, kind, walked up and poured his refill. "You him?" she asked quietly. He looked up. "Depends." She smiled. "The one who turned in his badge for the truth." He nodded slowly. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "My nephew died in custody. Never got answers. You just gave me peace." Daniel didn't respond right away, just nodded. Then, "Thank you." That evening, Tasha received a call. Not a press inquiry, not a protest organizer. It was the governor's office. They wanted to meet, privately. Tasha arrived just after sunset at a secured location 2 hours out of Eastwood. A cabin-style retreat used for quiet negotiations and political retreats. Inside, the governor stood with his legal team. He wasted no time. "You've taken apart a machine that's been running for decades." Tasha folded her arms. "It needed to stop running. I'm not here to stop you," he said. "I'm here to ask what you want next." She didn't hesitate. Independent oversight. A complete audit of every Eastwood conviction in the last 15 years, and protection for every whistleblower, survivor, and ally who came forward. He blinked. "That's a tall list. No taller than a coffin," the governor signed. "You'll have it, but we'll need you to help build the replacement." Tasha didn't smile. She just said, "I already am." The next morning, the mayor of Eastwood resigned. The chief of police was arrested. 6 officers were suspended pending federal review. And in front of City Hall, a new sign went up. Not permanent, not flashy, just a hand-painted board held by a teenage girl. "We don't need reform, we need rebirth." And Eastwood was listening. It was a Tuesday when Tasha finally walked the streets without being followed. No reporters, no counter-protesters, no anonymous threats waiting on her windshield. Just a breeze that carried something new across Eastwood, something that had been absent for a long, long time. Hope. She didn't dress in black today. She wore soft beige, loose slacks and a quiet scarf. For the first time in weeks, she moved without a mission stitched into her steps. The signs were still up. "Justice lives here. We remember. We rebuild." A badge isn't immunity, but they weren't angry signs anymore. They were affirmations, scars turned into scripture. On 5th and Langston, a group of teenagers painted a mural. Daniel Ross, hand on heart, standing with Clarissa Williams and Elijah Moore. Above them, in bold crimson paint, "Silence lost. Truth spoke." Tasha paused. Watched them work. One of the girls noticed her and froze, paintbrush trembling mid-air. "You're her," the girl said, awestruck. "You're you." Tasha smiled gently. "We're all us. That's the point." They painted faster after that. Meanwhile, Daniel stood inside the community center where the whole movement had first erupted. The same banner still hung, faded now. Still ridiculous. Public safety and community dialogue. Let's build together. Only now, the building wasn't hosting town halls or pretend panels. It had been renamed the Ross Center for Civil Integrity. He didn't ask for the honor, didn't even want it at first. But the people insisted, and when he spoke on opening day, he said, "I didn't come here to be forgiven. I came here to be useful." Now he runs programs for young cadets, trained them in de-escalation, community-first patrol strategy. ethics seminars. He stood before a class of 20, black, brown, white, and everything in between. First rule of public service, he said, is listening. If you're talking more than the people, you're not serving them, you're controlling them. A teen raised her hand. Officer Ross. Did you ever feel scared? He nodded. Every day. What made you keep going? He thought about that, and then he smiled. Her. Tasha returned to her hotel for the last time that night. She was moving back into her home tomorrow. The city had deemed the threats low risk now. Federal oversight remained in place. The justice system was under complete reconstruction. Formerly silenced judges were offering to reopen old cases. Convictions were being overturned, and not a single voice that came forward had gone unheard. Not one. Lena entered with 2 glasses of wine. You deserve this, she said. Tasha took one. We all do. They sat on the balcony, staring over a skyline that had shifted, not in buildings, but in belief. Are you going to accept the federal committee invite? Lena asked. Tasha sipped. Maybe. They want you to help rebuild nationwide. I know. Big shoes. Tasha looked down at her own feet. They're already mine. The final moment came quietly. A letter, hand-delivered. No return. Address, just 1 line written in bold black ink. Because of you, I believed my voice mattered. No signature. Tasha folded it slowly, placed it on her windowsill, and then closed her eyes, letting the weight finally rest. Not as surrender, but as I pause. Because the war for justice wasn't over. But for once, she could breathe. And that breath felt like a revolution. 6 months had passed, and Eastwood didn't just recover, it redefined. The city that once erased names now etched them in murals. The same police department that erased files now published monthly transparency reports, reviewed by citizen-elected boards. Civilian oversight was not only implemented, but modeled across 3 neighboring counties. Every badge now came with mandatory civil integrity certification. And in every school across Eastwood, 1 case study was taught first in every history. Civics and law class, the Tasha Lewis Tribunal, how 1 voice shifted a system. Daniel Ross now wore a different kind of uniform, not with a badge, not with a gun, but with a purpose stitched into every thread. He stood at the U.S. Department of Civil Reform headquarters in D.C. just after receiving his official appointment. To the National Police Integrity Council, he gave a short, quiet speech. I didn't come from a perfect background. I failed to speak up when it mattered, but I'm here now, and I won't let silence win again. Tasha was watching from the front row. She didn't clap louder than anyone else, but her eyes, they held more pride than any medal could. Outside, the courthouse that had once silenced so many stories, there now stood a 10-foot-tall bronze statue, not of a warrior, not of a president, of a woman holding a microphone. The plaque read, "She didn't raise her voice to shout. She raised it to speak." In honor of Tasha Lewis, defender of truth, tourists came to take photos, but locals, they came to remember. And more importantly, to remind others what truth looks like. Inside her modest Eastwood home, Tasha finally opened the last stack of letters. They had been coming in from across the world, London, Lagos, Lahore, Los Angeles. Some were written by children, others by elderly veterans who had never marched in their lives until now. One simply said, "I thought no one would believe me until you spoke." She placed that one in a small frame by the window. Next to it, a photo of Daniel standing in front of a classroom of new cadets. Next to that, a news clipping of Mayor Potter's resignation, folded in half with only the headline visible. Power. shaken by truth. But the most powerful moment came when Tasha visited the new Eastwood Justice Library. It was full of archives, court documents, photos, depositions, but also murals, audio recordings of testimonies. And in the center of the building, carved into stone, the closing words of her first public speech: "Today we march, tomorrow we vote, the next day we restructured." That wasn't just a quote anymore. It had become policy, it had become law, it had become legacy. That night, Tasha stood at the plaza where the first protest began. The fountain lights glowed soft gold. A girl walked by, maybe 12 or 13, dragging her little brother's hand. She paused in front of the statue and whispered, "That's her." The brother looked up. "Who?" The girl smiled. She made them listen, and just like that, they disappeared into the night. But their words stayed, because the real victory wasn't in the lawsuits, wasn't in the headlines, wasn't even in the statue. It was in the echo. The echo said, "We don't need permission to speak anymore. Because of her, they already were."